Zach Lavine has officially re-signed with the Chicago Bulls. And although for the most part, I think this was pretty expected, I know I did expect it, but it still is really important to take a look at and also analyze how this directly affects the rest of the team through free agency and potentially any trades. What this causes for the rest of your players, who you can possibly bring in to help, and just a whole bunch of things. But also you have to take a look at the actual contract itself, and that's exactly what I'm going to be doing today in this video. But if you enjoyed this video, why not give me a like? And if you enjoy this content and you're coming back on a daily basis, why not subscribe? Because for the most part, I have daily NFL, NBA, and NHL content. This past couple weeks here, I've had vacation and we've had a little bit of a slow patch, but we're definitely going to start picking up again here soon. But nonetheless, let's not waste any more of your time. Zach Lavine re-signs with the Chicago Bulls. Now, Zach Lavine re-signs for $215.2 million contract over 5 years, with the 5th year being a player option. So what does this all entail? Well, for one, he is now the highest paid player on the Chicago Bulls, as well as a max contract, and that kind of causes some issues cap situation wise, as in it doesn't allow you to bring in some bigger players around him, but I think Zach Lavine brings enough as is. Although he is maybe not an all-pro quite yet, or all-NBA quite yet, he's an all-star. He's proved multiple times. He's improved consistently throughout this team, and he's kind of been the rock, the cornerstone of this organization after the move from Jimmy Butler. He's, I think, the longest tenured player in this organization alongside guys like Kobe White, and he is an integral piece to this. You bring in Vooch because you have Zach Lavine and you want to contend. DeMar DeRozan comes here because you have Zach Lavine and Vooch. And now you have the potential to bring in more players because of the guys you have around him. And that all starts with Zach Lavine. So what does keeping Zach Lavine bring to this team? Well, obviously you have an incredible starting shooting guard, one of the top 5, top 10 in the league at that shooting guard position, but this also allows some leeway for your roster as it stands. So, as long as everyone's healthy, you're looking at Lonzo Ball as your starting point guard, Zach Lavine your starting shooting guard, small forward DeMar DeRozan, Patrick Williams is going to be your 4, and Nikola Vucevic is going to be your 5. Strictly talking guards here, keeping Zach Lavine, you have a starting shooting guard. You're not too worried about filling that spot. You have Lonzo Ball, if healthy, at your starting point guard spot. Now you have Alex Caruso, who can practically play 1 through 3. You have him as a backup. You have Ayo Dosunmu, who can practically play 1 through 3. You have him as a backup. You bring in a guy in the draft, in Dalen Terry, who you expect to continually progress, who can also play 1 through 3. So you have a bunch of depth at that guard position who can be versatile, who can play multiple positions, who can bring scoring, who can play defense, who can bring passing, who can bring just all sorts of things that you need that maybe your starters can't bring all by themselves. So Zach Lavine has definitely improved on his defense side of the ball, but by keeping guys like Caruso on this roster and Ayo Dosunmu, who is progressing, you have some very good defense. But the question now remains, with bringing in Dalen Terry, do you still need Kobe White? So I think bringing Zach Lavine back also allows you the opportunity to move Kobe White. Now, whether that's for a pick, I'm sure some players, some teams would be willing to do a first-round pick for Kobe White because he's still young, he still has, movability, and you don't have to pay him a ton because he hasn't fully shown what he can do for your team. And also, you could maybe potentially add him in with a different option to go get a bigger piece. And we'll talk about some of those pieces in a little bit. But keeping Zach allows for potential trades for Kobe White and also keeps that depth as depth. Keeps a really good bench instead of forcing one of those guys to step up as a starting position. Now, when you're looking at the forward position, you have DeMar DeRozan and Patrick Williams, your wings. Now, Patrick Williams, who had some struggles last year with injuries, seems to have a lot of potential, and I'm a huge fan of him. And then you have DeMar DeRozan, who was an MVP candidate last year, but some people are looking at a potential super big trade for Kevin Durant. Now, is that possible for this team? I'm not quite sure. Although I think I'd be a big fan of it, you're probably going to have to put a little bit too much into it for me. because how it stands right now, you have 3 all-stars on this team. Vooch, although he wasn't an all-star last year, he's an all-star. He's done it twice. You have DeMar and you have Zach. You're likely going to have to move DeMar and Vooch to go get a guy like Kevin Durant. Now you're down to 2 all-stars. Now, you don't need a big 3. I've done a video on this, but I think, don't you think 3 consistent players who can go out and score by themselves is better than 2? Even a guy like KD, who's top 5 in the league right now, top 3 probably. You got to wonder that 3 consistent guys is almost better, especially with KD's kind of injury concerns. Now, DeMar DeRozan, big fan of him. Patrick Williams, I think he's very, very good. And now you have that depth at that 3 with Caruso, Ayo Dosunmu, and Dalen Taylor all being able to kind of play that 3 role when they need to. You don't really know who's going to be your backup 4. So you have a question mark there. Or maybe a starting 4 if you want to bring in somebody at that position and move P. Will down. Now, at the center position, you have Vooch, who honestly I think is very, very good and can bring a lot to the team. Some people really would like the idea to move on from him. And you bring in a guy like Andre Drummond, who can go out and rebound for you on a consistent basis and has decent defense. That's a big, big help, and that was a big thing that the Bulls really struggled with, was getting rebounds. So with a guy that can rebound for you, maybe do you kind of shop Vooch with Kobe, since you don't need Kobe as much, and who could you possibly go target if you're willing to throw in a pick too? Well, you have a couple options there. You have Rudy Gobert, who was a huge talking piece for the Chicago Bulls organization throughout the most part during this summer, and I'm a big fan of him. But you also got to look at some potential other options. You can make a sign and trade for DeAndre Ayton, who is a young guy who brings youth to the team, but also brings some better defense than Vooch has, and some potential scoring that you can progress into. And although maybe he had a down year last year and really struggled in the playoffs, he can still step up big and is definitely an all-star capable guy. Or you stick with Vooch, you run Drummond, and you run the team back how it stands. You don't need to go make a big splash. I mean, look, who did the Celtics really bring in this past year? They bring back Al Horford. They brought in, a couple pieces here and there, but most time it was at the trade deadline, not in big free agency moves. They kept their core guys together, and they just made it work. And even the Warriors really never made a huge splash in free agency. They built within, and they continually did that. And they made some trades here and there, Andrew Wiggins and stuff. But again, that was like trade deadline acquisitions, not free agency. So it's okay if the Bulls don't make a huge free agency splash. But keeping Zach Lavine not only opens a lot of doors if you want to make a trade, but it also kind of makes it easier for you to build around. We still got to look at what the Bulls struggled with last year. Defense and consistent shooters. The team had one of the best field goal percentages in the league last year, but they didn't have a great three-pointing percentage. Or not three-point percentage, but, points consistently coming from three-point line. Now, Lonzo Ball healthy is going to add a lot to that. Zach Lavine, incredible shooter, three-point contest player. But on the way down, you kind of lose it. DeMar, definitely not a three-point shooter. P. Will, when healthy, is a pretty good three-point shooter, and Vooch can space the floor, but you'd rather have him stay inside. And the farther you get down the depth, the less shooting you see. So by bringing Zach Lavine in, you keep your starter there. Now you can focus on having those depth pieces. And there's a lot of options there for your depth pieces from, even simple small guys like Malik Monk, or you can go and bring in maybe a couple bigger names here and there that you can take a risk on because you find yourself in a prime position to do so. Now, if I can pull up on my computer here, and I'll kind of do this while I'm talking, so maybe you guys don't notice as much, but there's a lot of options here for the Chicago Bulls to bring in, not only for three-point percentage, but also for defense, because that was a big struggle for the Bulls last year, was their defense. Although it was really, really good early on, and they did pretty good for the most part throughout the year. It was nothing like what we fully hoped for. So let's talk some free agency options here, and not only defense, but also some three-point shooters. So like I brought up, Malik Monk is a very good option here for a three-point shooting. with a 39% three-point shooter. He played for the Lakers last year, by the way, and he brings some points off the bench, which if you move Kobe, who was the leading point getter off the bench, you move Kobe, Malik Monk could be a good option. He brings points off the bench, and you still have Ayo Dosunmu and Alex Caruso on that lower piece. Another really good option that I've seen a lot linked to this team is Victor Oladipo. Again, you bring scoring off the bench. I think he's a prime six-man of the year candidate if you have him on this team with a lot of incredibly ball-moving, efficient guards in that backup role. But he can play a shooting guard role. You can move Ayo Dosunmu to a 3 and Caruso at the 1, or flip Caruso and Ayo. And he's also a 41% three-point shooter. You have some really, really good options here for three-point shooters. But you also kind of got to look at the defensive side of the ball. Now, early on, a lot of people's favorite picks, especially add on the defense, was like Mo Bamba. You had Mitchell Robinson. You had P.J. Tucker. Mo Bamba re-signs with the Magic. P.J. Tucker ends up signing a pretty big contract for, was it the 76ers? I may be wrong on that, but like $11 million a year contract. A really, really big contract. And you don't really need Mitchell Robinson now that you bring in Drummond. But you know, there's still a lot of really, really good options here that you can bring in for the defense side of the thing. And I think the main target right now, unless the Bulls go for a big move, a big trade like Rudy, like DeAndre Ayton, or anything like that where you're moving Vooch, I think the only thing the Bulls really need to target is 3-and-D wings. Play defense, and you can shoot the ball. Because there's not a lot of wings, which is the forward position, by the way, if you didn't know, on this roster that are really good from three-point range. And now we don't even know if Javonte is going to still be on this team. I think Troy Brown Jr. just signed with the Lakers. Kind of lost some options here. And I think Javonte is a very good option for a 3-and-D type of guy. But the Bulls could definitely target for a couple more options. And they could even do that now through a trade. They could go get, a bigger name that isn't a free agency, or just a better option by using Kobe White. Or they could do a sign and trade deal, move Kobe for a guy that maybe potentially could have signed somewhere else if the Bulls didn't step in the way. So lots and lots of good options, and all this occurs because of Zach Lavine re-signing with this team. Let's make this very important. Zach Lavine was my number one thing to focus on for the Chicago Bulls. I thought re-signing Zach Lavine was the most important thing, and the Bulls get it done. Now it's just time to tick some of these other boxes. And although some people may say this team's not a contending team because they didn't make it very far last year with what they already had now, so you have to bring in a big name. But let's remember something. Zach Lavine was playing on an injured knee, and didn't he hurt his wrist early on in the year or hurt his thumb? Lots of injuries for Zach Lavine through the most part throughout last year, and he still played through it for the team, and he played quite well, especially for his injury. Healthy Zach Lavine, he's going to improve. DeMar DeRozan was playing at MVP candidacy level, and, honestly, he kind of left the defrozen argument in the playoffs out for the most part. He had like a 40-some point game. Really, really good for him, and he stepped up when you needed him most. Vooch was playing really, really good in the playoffs, especially compared to some of the struggles he had during the regular season, and that's going to happen when you bring in new guys. You're going to have some struggles, especially since Vooch didn't have a full year with Zach before they brought in DeMar. So the longer this goes on, the better they're going to figure out things. Patrick Williams had an injury and maybe wasn't stepping up as big as some of us wanted to, but now he's been training with DeMar DeRozan for the most part throughout this entire offseason. I expect big step-ups, and he's already very good on defense, so just a couple more points per game, like adding 2 more or 3 more. I'm expecting somewhere around like 12, 14, 15 points per game from Patrick Williams, along with his defense, which is really, really good, a step up, and adds a lot. And if you have Lonzo Ball healthy, who is one of the best passers, is that a fair statement? I think he's one of the best passers in the league. And you bring in him, who can also score, who can also shoot threes, who will likely average somewhere around 15 or so points per game. You're adding a lot. And then you have a depth in Dalen Terry, Alex Caruso, Ayo Dosunmu, and technically you still have Kobe White, but I don't expect him to stay with the team. That's really good depth. It's just a 3-and-D wingers, I think, is what this team is missing. And bringing back Zach allows you to really zone in on that and target that. Because if Zach moves on, now you got to find a guard who is the same level. And if you can't find a guard at the same level, now you're panicking. You're like, oh, maybe we got to go find a starter in a different position. And now you don't have to do that. Zach Lavine's re-signing is huge for this team. I don't think it's an overpay, and I think it opens the doors a lot for what this team can do. So, what are your thoughts? Do you think signing Zach Lavine for that amount, or just in general, was the right option? And what do you think this team needs to target now? Do they need to trade Vooch and Kobe for a bigger name at center? I'm not opposed to it, but I like Vooch. I think Kobe needs to get moved, but what for, I'm not quite sure. We just don't need him on the roster at this current moment. I think 3-and-D at the winger spot is the most important thing right now. But what are your thoughts? If you enjoyed this video, why not hit me with a like? And if you enjoy this channel and you want to see more like it, why not subscribe? Because for the most part, I have daily NFL, NBA, and NHL content. But as always, I hope it touched them today. Hope it made you smile. Hope it made you laugh. Someone's really important to me. Affect someone else's day in a great way, because every single day can be a great day if we all put in the effort to do so. And as always, you guys all be safe out there.
Something deep inside won't let me